I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is a debut author and the author of the book Finding Lady Baltimore, none other than Miss Mila Maxwell. Welcome, Miss Mila, on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
Hello, well, thank you for having me. Yes, I live in New Brunswick, Canada, and I'm a mom. I have two French bulldogs. I co own a gym, and I'm a volunteer firefighter.
Oh, thank you so much, Miss Mila, for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Thank you. And hoping for more and more empowering books like this to come. So tell us, finding Lady Baltimore implies search. Is a Lady Baltimore a person, a place, a lost object, or metaphorical concept? What sets the search in motion?
I always struggle to answer this because I'm afraid that I'm giving too much away. But when I was writing the book, I was looking for something that the the protagonist, which is me in the book, a fictionalized version of me, I was looking for something that she would discover on the beach. And I said, well, what are some things that I've seen on the beach? I said, I've seen some whales, I've seen some different things wash up on shore. And I said, what if Morgan in the story found a suitcase? So as I was doing research and trying to describe a suitcase, I said, well, I don't want it to be a new suitcase. It has to be somewhat older, maybe a little vintage. So I typed up vintage blue suitcase, and the brand Lady Baltimore apparently is a brand from the United States. Uh, it was exactly what I had in mind. So originally the book was called The Blue Suitcase, but once I got further into the writing process, it became Finding Lady Baltimore. So I think that still leaves like a little bit of intrigue to readers, but that's where the title came from.
What is the protagonist, the personal connection to this search? Why is finding Lady Baltimore a matter of heart and soul, not just intellectual curiosity?
So when I first set out to write this book, I was going to write a memoir, and to me it felt flat. It felt like I was complaining, it felt kind of boring. It felt like sometimes an event would happen at one point in my life, but then a similar event would happen later. And I said, what if there was a way that I could connect all these things? So I decided to write a fictionalized memoir, per se. And the suitcase has a lot of different meanings in the book. She or it, at the beginning, I think is more of a device to give me a glimpse into other people's perspectives. But then as the book progresses, it's not to make it sound strange, but it's almost like the suitcase mirrors what Morgan is going through. And she almost develops a persona, or she becomes a character of her own in the story.
Miss Miller, what are primary forces working against the search? Is it a rival, a secret, the passage of time, or the protagonist's own internal doubts? Without spoilers.
With the suitcase in particular, or just in general?
In general.
It was kind of Morgan against herself, especially as a younger child. It was these misconceptions and these misunderstandings that wasn't really the truth. And it was truth in a way because it was how she felt. But as the story progresses, Morgan is able to see things from a different perspective, and gain insight into what other people are going through and gain insight into what she as a younger child was going through with a bit of a more mature or an older lens. So yeah, you'll just have to read it and see.
Read it, people, read it. So, what most the pivotal clue or discovery in the journey that open up the entire mystery?
A clue?
Yes, what was the most pivotal clue or discovery?
The suitcase, even though it happens earlier on in the book, was the big discovery. Um, but it it carries on in the book, and it we find it in different situations, in different scenarios where Morgan is. So it leaves a lot of mystery, because you're left wondering, like, what is with this suitcase? Is it magical? Is there someone behind it? Is, who's kind of doing all of these things? So there's also letters that show up, with the suitcase. Not every single time that Morgan is around it, but there are letters, and she's trying to figure out if or what, is there someone behind the letters, or are they just magically appearing, because they tend to coincide with things that she's facing and things that she's going through. They almost offer a sort of support or, friendship, if I want to dare go that far.
The character and setting, Miss Miller. Why goes from the past? I regret loss a family secret. Is it a protagonist carrying the fuels or their determination?
I can speak from myself, even though the book isn't me, but it's technically me. Um, I think for a long time I carried a lot of guilt, a lot of shame, resentment, because the big part of the story is that I grew up with a sister that has special needs. She has a couple disabilities, so I think I had a lot of unresolved self hatred, unresolved, resentment when it came to that. So for me, writing the story, even though it's technically fiction, a lot of it is true, and it was a very healing process to write this book. So I was able to grow as Morgan grew, if that makes sense.
Makes sense. And who is the most memorable or surprising character you encountered or created on this journey, and why did they leave such a mark?
I'm not sure. There's a character in the book, and when I was writing it, I was part of this writing group out of Ontario called Working Writers Co. And every Thursday, all of the writers of the group would meet, and one of the writers would share, a chapter, and then the other members would critique the chapter and offer their feedback. And earlier on in the book, I had this character. His name is Vern, and he just a little bit different, a little bit strange, kind of beats to his own drum, just does his own thing. And I think he's seen as a bit of a weirdo. Just he's a little bit strange, and
Hmm.
you don't really know how to feel about him at the beginning of the book. And he was not supposed to be a main character or a even a secondary character in the book. He was just going to be mentioned that one time. And it made me laugh because everyone in the group that day said, we need more of Vern. So Vern became interwoven into the story in ways that I didn't expect, but he really helped carry the story forward. And he really offered Morgan a different way of looking at things and a way of being. And she really learned a lot from him when the story came to an end.
The evolution of the goal, Ms. Miller, how does the definition of finding change from the beginning of the book to the end? Is it about discovery, recovery, or understanding?
Understanding for sure. And I think you could look at it and think of it as almost a coming of age story for Morgan. And when I was writing it, I was concerned that it was going to be more of a young adult book. which it's not. I wouldn't even classify it as that, even though young adults can read it. But it really surprised me because a lot of my parents' friends, even male friends who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s, have read this book and said that they resonated with it. So yeah, it was a new understanding, and the story almost wrote itself sometimes. So that was a very surprising discovery for me personally as I was writing this fictionalized version of my life. It's almost like I had to write it to be able to peel back the layers of things that I kept inside, and there was just more and more story in there, and that really surprised me.
Truly inspire everyone if they will read it for sure, Miss Miller. What was the initial seed for this story?
Actually, it was very strange how it came about. So, like I had mentioned earlier, I had for a long time felt resentment and guilt and all of these not so great emotions, and I think that can be very common of someone who grows up alongside someone with disabilities. Not to generalize, but I think it's a common theme. So I had had a very deep conversation with my mother when I had gone home to Nova Scotia a couple weeks prior, maybe even a week prior. And my sister and I had had this silly fight, and I tried to always treat her as normally as I could, but I would always feel guilty after the fact because oh, I don't she doesn't understand as much as she should, and I shouldn't be so hard on her. So I had this conversation with my mother, and my mom basically said, no one has these expectations of you but yourself. And she said, your dad and I don't, your sister doesn't. And she said, your sister loves you and she doesn't expect you to answer the phone every time she called. She doesn't expect you to visit her every single time you come home. So I'm not sure if that was the pivotal moment, but not long after that, I was going to bed one night and my husband and I had just discussed book writing because he was always not always, but he was often mentioning like, "Oh, you should write a book." And it's like, "No, I don't even know what I'd write about." And as I was falling asleep that night, a sentence came into my head, and I like sat up and I said, "That's a book." I ran with it. I started writing the book the very next day, and I didn't stop until it was done.
Well done, Miss Miller. Well done. And which scene or chapter was the most difficult for you to write emotionally and why?
Um, there were a few. I think there's a chapter that I go back to when I was a child, and there was an incident that had happened where my sister got hurt. That one was challenging, but I think it was talking with my parents and hearing their side of the story and certain things I had seen firsthand. But it was, yeah, just realizing now that I'm a mother, what certain things my parents and especially my mother had gone through, whether it was taking my sister for surgery and her screaming her face off that the doctors were taking her away to put her under. And those were very hard scenes because I was able to put myself in my mom's shoes and realize the severity or the intensity of the things that she had gone through. And I mean, as a parent, you go through things with your kids uh, if they're able-bodied and able-minded, but if they're not, you are exposed to things that can be quite traumatic and scary.
Was there a moment in the writing process where the story or character surprised you and took the narrative in a direction you had not originally planned?
Yeah, I would go back to Vern on that one because he was one that surprised me, and many times I would sit down to write and I'd struggle and I wouldn't know what to write next. And then there's other mornings I would sit down to write and the book would just almost take on a mind of its own. So Vern was a very surprising character. And my grandmother was a big part of the book as well. And she was not so surprising of a character. I kind of had an idea of where I would go with her, but I still had a lot of fun with her character, just where we are so close. So she got to read it this past summer, and That was pretty special. But I would say Vern and my grandmother. Those two characters were the ones that surprised me the most.
Miss Mila, as an debut author, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
I think everyone wants success. I think every author wants their book to be a bestseller or get noticed by certain people. But I have to kind of remind myself that that's not why I wrote it. I wrote it for myself, first of all, to get a lot of things off my chest. I wrote it to heal. And yeah, if it gets picked up, great. I mean, it's been doing very well. I've sold quite a few copies since April, so I'm very pleased with it. But yeah, everyone wants their book on a bestseller list. It would be great if it got turned into a movie. Um, it would be neat if it got discovered by like Mateo Roach for CBC Bookends. Yeah, everyone wants attention for their work, but yeah, we'll see where it goes.
Yes, definitely. Good luck to your goals, Miss Mila. Looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be an author like you?
Don't overthink it. And I have a background in journalism, but it's not journalism was not the same style of writing as this was. So I almost had to relearn to write creatively because it was never something that I was very good at. So yeah, if you have a story that's in there, don't overthink it. Just start. And whether you publish it or you just write it for yourself, you might surprise yourself. So yeah, give it a shot and see what ends up because you never know.
You never know. People stop procrastinating and write, write, write. If you have the passion to write. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey, Miss Mila?
Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert was one that I listened to not long before I started writing. I've read it. I've listened to the audiobook. I always listen to the audiobook just here and there. It was just a reminder, or maybe it was that extra push to just not overthink and to just everyone's creative. And she says that in her book. She said, whether you're an artist, whether you work in business, I think it was her that said it. Everyone has some creativity. Like I always say, my husband works in management, so he is creative when it comes to problem solving. He's creative when it comes to managing people and motivating people. Me, not so much. I'm more creative in the arts with writing, with artistic things. So yeah, everyone's creative. You just have to find what fires you up and go with it.
Go with it for sure. And thank you for that recommended book, Miss Miller. The reader's experience and ending. What feeling do you hope a reader is left with after they turn the final page?
Hope. Yeah, like I had a friend say that she wanted to hug the book when she finished it because I think when you're young and maybe a little bit lost and not sure what comes next, it can feel very lonely. It can feel very isolating. Whereas, yeah, Morgan discovers things along her way, and the same happened with me. And I think that happens for a lot of people to say things will get better. You just have to listen to what is true to you, and maybe not care so much what other people are doing, and do things that make you excited and things that make you feel alive, and not worry so much what other people are doing or comparing yourself to other people and what they might be achieving.
Yes, don't compare yourself, people, to others because Miss Miller says hope is always in the corner. Without giving spoilers, can you hint at the deeper, perhaps metaphorical meaning behind Lady Baltimore that this reader will uncover?
Yeah, that's a hard one because I don't want to give too much away, and I feel like I've already said maybe more than I should have. But yeah, just pay attention to the symbolism in the book, if and when you read it. That there's a lot of different storylines within the storylines, and a lot of different interconnected parts that I've had a few people say, I've read your book and I noticed this, and then it was almost like they were, especially a lot of people that I know, wanted to just read through it and get it done, just to see what it was about. But then many people have said they've read it again and they've noticed things or picked up on things that they hadn't noticed the first time.
Very well said, Miss Mila. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and mental health 101, love letters in third season, and Movie 101 Review, Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Ms. Miller, having completed this book, what did the process of writing it, of finding Lady Baltimore yourself, ultimately teach you?
That if you really want something, you can do it, and everyone has a story to tell.
Indeed, everyone have a story to tell. So please share to the world just like Miss Mila Maxwell. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Miss Mila. And can you please invite our listeners to support your debut book, Finding Lady Baltimore?
Yes, thank you. Well, it's available on Amazon as an ebook or a hardcover or paperback. And if you're in the Maritimes, it's available at all Coles, Chapters, and Indigo locations.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Mila Maxwell because if you support her, for sure, more and more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Miss Mila, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
More to come, people. See you soon.